Should you start a nonprofit underneath your for-profit? There are 3 different ways that you could possibly do this, but I want to give you a few caveats before you make that decision. The other day, I met with a client, and one of the things she wanted to do was really start a nonprofit underneath a for-profit. And one of the things I always caution people when they want to start a nonprofit is to really think about, do you need to start a nonprofit to do the charitable act? And it's okay if you're doing a mission that is influencing and helping people and doing well, and you're not necessarily a nonprofit. Because one of the things that happens when people start nonprofits is they forget that you also have a board. You have a fiduciary responsibility to the IRS because they are also not taking taxes from you, assuming that you are doing a charitable activity. And that is extremely important that you govern those funds well. And if you're looking for this to pay for your salary as a nonprofit, and as a for-profit business owner, and you want to use a nonprofit to kind of funnel funds through so that it'll end up coming to you, I have a lot to say about that. Let's jump into that. If you're new to my channel, my name is Ashlee Tate, and I am a brand strategist for creatives, change makers, and small business owners who want to unleash their message into the world and design a life and business on purpose. In today's video, I want to talk a little bit more about what it means to create a nonprofit underneath your for-profit business and some of the things that you need to keep in mind before you do that. You have 3 different ways to do this specific type of setup. And it's not a bad setup. It's just, like I said earlier in the intro, you want to make sure that the reason that you're doing this is purely from a charitable perspective. You want to make sure that you have a reason for people to donate to your organization, and that it needs to be underneath your for-profit. Let me jump into the first piece. The first piece is really, you can get a fiscal sponsor. There are people out there who are already nonprofits. They run as a nonprofit. They have the admin set up for it. They have everything else for the organization. As far as the administration side of things go, they will generally charge between 2 to 8%, and you can use that for, they have to, use that to basically pay for the admin costs that they're using and the labor that they're using to transfer the funds to you in your organization. The other requirement of having a fiscal sponsorship is that you also still need to have a board. So you have to still have a board of directors because someone still needs to be the fiduciary responsibility and overseeing, where that money is going, how it's being used. No matter what you do, if you feel like it's a charitable activity and you're taking donations from people, you will need to have checks and balances, because those are the only checks and balances that you essentially have since you are not having taxes taken out. The other day, I met with a client, and one of the things she wanted to do was really start a nonprofit underneath a for-profit. And one of the things I always caution people when they want to start a nonprofit is to really think about, do you need to start a nonprofit to do the charitable act that you want to do? And it's okay if you're doing a mission that is influencing and helping people and doing well, and you're not necessarily a nonprofit. Because one of the things that happens when people start nonprofits is they forget that you also have a board. You have a fiduciary responsibility to the IRS because they are also not taking taxes from you, assuming that you are doing a charitable activity. And that is extremely important that you govern those funds well. I would also highly recommend that if you do use a fiscal sponsor, you do set this up with a legal contract so that they know how much they're getting from each place, from each amount that comes through, and you know how much they're taking out from each amount that comes through. Now, number 2 is that you can completely start a nonprofit of your own. What this means is that you would go through and get the full-on 501c3, which I have a video that you can watch here. I have a course that you can use called the Unleash Your Purpose course, which you can find on my website at ashleetate.com in the Work With Me section. And that's a 30-day course that will walk you through every step that you need to set up a nonprofit. One of the things that I want to make sure I say on this is, you have to realize that when you start a nonprofit, you're essentially starting a whole nother business, and it will require a lot of your energy and a lot of your time. So if you have time to do that, great. You also will have to find your board members, to set your board members up and make sure that you have that running smoothly. And the key with starting a nonprofit under your for-profit is that you're not really starting it under your for-profit. You are starting a nonprofit separately. And it's very important and key here. This is the key, that you have separate bank accounts for both businesses. This money cannot be mixed. Your bank accounts need to be separate, which therefore is giving you two separate businesses, one with a board, one without a board. Now, you can certainly market them together and you can create, information together, like you guys are, maybe sister organizations, but they do need to be separate. Now, lastly, what I would recommend for anyone who is a for-profit, who wants to start a nonprofit or who wants to provide some social impact, I would recommend, if you don't want to start another business, I would recommend that you actually just become a major sponsor of another organization doing what it is that you want to do. When you're providing the funds to help them run that nonprofit, you're doing a lot more good, and you guys can talk about how these funds are going to be used. You can talk about how you want to be marketed. You're also doing some good. So I would say that if you want to leverage your for-profit for a nonprofit, that is the way that I would really encourage most of you to do that. Now, some of you really feel that you have, this urge to start a nonprofit and you don't mind having a board and you want to do all these things. And the best thing I can just say to you is, whether you go the fiscal sponsorship route or you go the start a full-on nonprofit, it's important to keep those two completely separate. Look into that. That's really all I have for you today. I hope that helps you. I hope that helps you make that decision. It is a tough decision, and I know that it's something that you might really feel like you want to do, but really think about if you can still execute your mission even though you're not a nonprofit. If you can answer that question with a yes, then you don't need to be a nonprofit. So you make sure you have something charitable that you're actually doing that cannot be executed as a for-profit. I hope that helps you guys, and I will see you next week. I want you to get out there and unleash something amazing. Leave down in the comments if you decided to go ahead and go with the nonprofit route and which option you chose. And if you are choosing not to, I'd love to hear that too, and kind of what made you decide not to go that route. If you have any questions or anything, you can leave those in the comments as well. And if you want to talk a little bit more in depth, I definitely do 1-hour consultations, and you can find all of that inside of my website at ashleetate.com. Also, don't forget to join the tribe. If you haven't already, there are tons of people who also have a heart for impact and want to make an impact on the world, and we would love to have you in there. So you can grab your invitation at ashleetate.com as well. Everything is there. So go check it out, and I will see you next week. Bye, guys.